All right, guys, in today's video, we're taking a look at this 2013 Chevrolet Avalanche LT. And if we zoom in here by the driver's side wiper arm, we can see that the washer fluid is leaking from the hose connection and the barb that's underneath the cowl piece here. You can see the wetness. Now I'm going to turn the washer on so that we can see this leak more pronounced. Right, so that's what we're going to be working on today. Not too difficult of a fix. Let's take a look at what the service manual has to say about this, and then we'll go ahead and get into it. All right, guys, let's take a look at the manual. Escalade, Yukon, Avalanche, Suburban, and Tahoe. 2013, but any of the models in the video title, they're going to be the same. So if we look at the windshield washer hose replacement, this is very kind of vague here, but what you need to understand is there's three pieces to this. There's a section that runs front to the pump and the reservoir. Then there's a section that runs under the cowl and pops out under each wiper. And then there's a section that runs on each wiper. So this piece here, these two pieces that join, we can see those right over here. Right? And so this connection right here is what they're showing is where if you separate this, this is one pipe that goes all the way to the pump and the reservoir. And then the other section is a pipe that goes to underneath the cowl. Now, if we come back over to the manual, they don't show any other diagrams or pictures about this. The only other thing they show here is we take a look at removing the wiper arm. We can see in part 3 here, this little hose. And if we come down here, they mention disconnecting this washer hose. So that's your third piece. So you've got the two I showed you, and then each wiper has a small hose where the nozzle sits to actually spray the washer fluid. So for the kind of brake we've got, I can tell right now that it's a problem where this hose connects into the cowl hose. I think I've got one of these cowl hoses in the spare parts pile for this model series. Let me see if I can find that to give you a better view. Yeah, I've got one of these parts, guys. So here's that connector that we showed earlier. And it kind of bends around, and then it goes under the cowl, and it pops up here. And there's going to be a little barb on the washer arm that we'll see in a minute that plugs into this. So this is the one for the driver's side, and if we scroll this all the way over, at the end there's the passenger side. And this particular cable is a 2090 8176, and these typically break anywhere along this line because it's flexible, but it's a stiff kind of line. These ends are rubber, so they're not typically going to break, but it might break right here where the two come together. This one's kind of got like a T shape, so it might break on either side of the T. I don't think that's the problem we've got going on today, though, but I just wanted to get you familiar with what we were seeing in this picture. So this here, if I go back to that other page, this here is what that hose plugs into. All right, guys, so I'm going to go in here, and I expect this to break off when I try to pull it, but let's just go ahead and try to see if we can get this barb to let go. Okay, so it came off of there. So this is what's leaking, is this barb piece that we saw in the previous clip. That barb goes into this hose here. So now we're going to have to get a tool, see if we can grasp this barb and pull it out of that hose that's running under the cowl. All right, I'm going to use, this tool is kind of large, but what it is, it's plastic line jaws, right? So just in the event that this is not the problem, I want to try and get it out without it being damaged. And then also kind of want to put my hand down here, so I might block your view for a moment because you don't want to have the tool suddenly let go and scratch the paint on the hood. All right, so now we got this guy out. So now if we zoom in right here, I think we can see, if you zoom in, it's cracked, right? So the problem is this little barb. Unfortunately, GM doesn't service just this little barb. I'll show you what they want you to replace this with. All right, guys, so there's your little barb on the hose. And the only way you can get this is by buying the whole assembly. That's whether it's from GM or Aftermarket. They just don't sell this piece separately. The GM version is a 2291 7502. This is for the driver's side. I'll include in the description the passenger side one. But the argument here, or the thinking here, is once this plastic gets to the point of having this kind of problem occur, then the next thing to go is going to be the nozzle. And so both GM and the aftermarket folks, their opinion is, well, you should replace this whole thing. And you can't just take the hose assembly and the nozzle because it's all made into the arm. So you end up having to replace the whole thing. So that's what I'm going to show you today, is replacing this arm so that we can fix this broken barb. All right, I'll show you something else. You notice in the service manual it talked about alignment marks for the arms on these wipers. This is the passenger side. All right, if we zoom in here, we can see this little mark that's made into the windshield glass right there on the passenger side. And what they're telling you to do is when you put this arm back on, you want that blade to lay right in the range of that mark. So let's take a look at the one on the driver's side now. All right, you guys saw when I showed you the service manual, the procedure. Now I'll show it to you. We have to remove this cap. We're going to use a small pry bar to get this cap off. And when we get this cap off, that's going to expose the nut that's underneath. And that nut's a 15. And we're going to loosen that up. Sorry about bumping you guys. All right, and with the nut off, now we just got to get the arm off. Now sometimes they'll come off without a lot of fight by just giving them a little bit of a jiggle. If they don't, there's a special tool that you can use to get this off. We move this out of the way, and we're going to grab that, and we're going to see if we can pry this guy off. All right, guys, all I've done is put a little PB blaster on there, and I just made a little mark with a Sharpie to kind of tell me where the stud and the arm are with respect to this notch that we prise that cap off with. I'm just going to stick a little rag here by the hood so that we don't scratch anything up with this puller tool that we're going to use. This is a First Info F3393 wiper arm puller. Let's see if I can get this on with you guys sitting in my way. Just want to get it on the bottom of the base of the arm. Tighten up these little red twisties. And then get it centered on the stud. And then if we zoom out a little bit, we're just going to crank down until it lets go. That might have been it right there. I'm not sure if that or it just came off. Let's see. Nope. Not yet. I doubt this arm has ever been off. So we're just going to have to coax it all the way. You can see it's moving. It's just hard to get it to go up the threads just due to age and how long it's been sitting in this position. All right, let's see if we can get it off now. Here we go. All right. All right, so there's the hose, and then it routes up here, and then it goes to the spring, and then it goes to the nozzle right there. So to put the replacement one on, just kind of reverse that process. That's just the arm, right? There's no blade on it. We're going to use that mark we made with the Sharpie and just kind of take that little notch and get it lined up with that mark. Just at least that'll get us close to being dialed in. All right, guys, now on the driver's side, same thing. You can see there's the little mark right there. If you zoom in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-position this arm, and I'm going to lay it right on that mark. like right in the middle of that mark. So between that mark and the little black Sharpie mark that we made on the stud, that's what's going to help us get this lined up back where it needs to go before we tighten the 15 millimeter nut that retains it back down. Then we can put our nut back on, and we can use the nut to help work it down onto the splines. Then we can torque it up later. I'm just going to gently set it down here so I can make sure that we're able to get this hose barb in. So that guy's going to fit into that line that I mentioned to you that's running under the cowl. We're just going to get that put in there. And then before we go any further, we're going to go give it a test to make sure it doesn't leak. All right, guys, you got to put the arm on first because we're going to give it a test. So we've done that. Now if we come down and see what we've got going on with this hose, I'm going to activate the washer. And you can see we're spraying out of the arm and we're not leaking where we made our repair. So now we just have two things left to do and we're all done. All right, only thing left to do is torque this nut down to 26 foot-pounds. Now remember earlier we showed you in the clip with the little black mark here, right? So you want to make sure that the blade stays on that while you torque this guy down. Just keep your hand on the arm while you torque it down to 26 foot-pounds. You get near the end, it's going to want to have a tendency to move on you. That's the whole point of this is, and then you're going to put the little cap back on. Just push that down to cover it up, and you're done. So with that, we've got this repair. We've got the arm back nice and aligned up where it's supposed to be. We've already tested it, so we know we're in good shape with the repair on the hose itself. Now, the only thing I would tell you is, is this the only way you could repair this? Well, it is the only factory way to repair this. And if you were to reach out to aftermarket companies like Dorman, they'll tell you the same thing. They don't make a barb this small. It's a very small barb. So if you try to get an aftermarket repair on this, they're going to tell you to buy the new arm with this barb as well. Could you find something that would work? Maybe, but it would be a hunt. Let me show you a couple other things before we wrap the video up, like in what if this had broke off inside. All right, so what if you wanted to just replace this barb? So like I said earlier, you can't buy it from GM. I glued this back together just to show us this little comparison. And you can't get it if you have a Dorman arm. They won't sell you just this part either. But you can generically track down a barb that's roughly this size. So just to help you out here, right, I kind of crawled through the entire parts bin at a local Napa, and this is the only one. It's not the right length, but at least it's a very similar diameter, and I think it would probably work. This is something I'll run you at a local Napa store. I think this goes for like $3 or $4, even though it's that small. That's what it's going to go for. And the part number on this from Napa is it's a 9861. I believe it's an NBH 9861. But that would be something you could try if you didn't want to go OEM. And I prefer to do OEM when I do these things. I kind of trust the judgment that eventually the nozzle itself is going to get brittle and break as well. But if for some reason you wanted to go with just a quick repair, I would recommend something like this Napa part. All right, what if this was like this and had broke completely off? And how would you get it extracted from the hose that runs under the cowl? Well, the technique I'd recommend you do in that particular situation, if you had it, is you take a coarse threaded screw like this. It's roughly the diameter of the barb, and you would turn it in just a couple of threads, and then you could get a pair of pliers, and that would allow you to pull the barb out of the bottom part of the hose. So that's how you could extract it if it had broke off. I had one handy because I thought that's what we were going to encounter, but in our case it was just cracked. Anyway, so if you got questions or comments on what we did below or what I've showed you, go ahead and leave a comment below. I'll try to answer any questions you have or explain anything that wasn't obvious in the video. If you found this was useful for you getting your vehicle's leak repaired and educate you on the options and the hoses that are involved, I'd appreciate you paying it forward by hitting that like button. And as always, thanks for watching.